and you're listening to KOPN Tech Radio. And this new week, new edition, new everything. In the studio, we have John.
Hello.
We have Scott.
Hey, everybody.
Let's get where are you on 3? Let's get another one, Scott.
Hey, everybody.
There we go.
This is right. Hold on, I'm fixing my mic. That's better. How's that? Yes, we can all hear now. And,
Yep.
And speak, which is good.
So for those that don't know what we do, we generally scour the web for the latest and greatest and most awesomest tech news we can find, and then come and reiterate it over the air, and then get a little squabbles about what we think it means for the future of our society.
Doom and gloom. That's the key. And Apple. Doom, gloom, and Apple.
Well,
That's
Apple's
right.
dying.
Gloom and Apple.
Apple's dying. So, that's
right. Oh.
Even more doom and gloom.
That would be doom and gloom because there's no replacement for the top end of the market. Yeah, I mean, how am I going to spend all my hard-earned, money? Although, as far as physical hardware goes, Razer is moving along in the laptop world. Yeah, I mean, I guess I haven't really followed the laptop market in a while. No, it's not. The big thing is they're now starting to put, they're putting desktop-grade graphics card in these things. Oh, okay. Which, of course, eats up your battery life, but people are treating their desktops, their notebooks, more like desktops every year. Yeah. And so I'm not going to be shocked if the world moves into mobile computing rather than, let me get back to that, because mobile sounds like phones. Luggable computers start to come back. Or portable workstations. Portable workstations, rather than laptops. Right. That's already how I treat my laptop, so I'm not too surprised. Well, I never use the battery on my laptop. I mean, I use it if I need to move which outlet I'm plugged into, so it needs to run for at least 20 seconds.
I do that too. That's why my batteries last an average of 2 months before they get completely shot.
Because you just move from one outlet to another?
It's because they're plugged in all the time.
Yeah.
Because, it's
always topping up the charge, never actually used. See, my batteries last pretty well. Of course, I usually burn an hour or two's worth of battery a day, so I actually try to use it a little bit. Try to be mobile-ish with it? Yeah, well, I mean, I pretend to be mobile-ish, right? I take it out of its charger and its docking station and I roll 6 feet to a different table. Now, if you wanted to go extreme on that kind of thing, what you do is you get one of those little near-field chargers, and then you build your house on top of a Tesla coil of some kind. There you go. I'm sure the power company would totally believe that. Seriously. Oh, they'd happily sell it to me. Yeah, that's true. They'd happily charge you up to tears. Dead from cancer in about a year or two, but meanwhile, I'd be wireless. It's true. You would never have to worry about charging anything ever. Actually, I used the wrong term. It's not Tesla coil. It'd be a house-sized transformer coil. Right. Induction coil. Not even transformer. I'm using all the wrong words today. Yeah, well, where's my basic electricity gone this week? Electricity knowledge. There we go. Oh, we got Mike in the studio. I heard him on a tech support call out in the hallway earlier.
I was just I was talking to my mother.
You can totally get tech support calls.
So does KOPN have the podcast? I'm like, yeah, go to KOPN.org. When does your radio show start? About 2 minutes ago, Mom.
We're going to avoid making jokes about your mother on the air. Especially with the camera staring right at us. That's right. It'd be very impolite of us.
Okay.
Yeah. On the other hand...
I doubt she's listening. I doubt she has the prowess of hearing me on the air, so...
Well, that's okay. Mike's mom, we all like you. You're a wonderful woman.
Yeah.
There you go. On the other news, for things that irritate Mike is your fault.
Yeah, I mean, other things that irritate Mike, yeah.
Other things that irritate Mike. Curiosity found a meteorite on Mars, and they took a picture of it.
Yeah.
And that got published today.
Oh, that stuff's great.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
No, I like that stuff.
Yeah. The meteorite, and it's a pretty cool picture, actually. You can find it online. It's like it looks kind of like a seashell. It's pretty odd. The Curiosity hold it up to its ear? I wonder if it heard the ocean, right? No, but it apparently did take a spectrum of it to determine, where it came from.
Oh, that's great.
What it's made of, so yeah, it's kind of cool. Actually, I didn't bring it with me. I could have done another space story just to help out Mike get ready. Right.
NASA has made formalized plans to go visit an asteroid that's made of iron.
Oh, yeah? Like with a person or like a non-moving probe?
No, the probe. They're just gonna go take pictures of it and sample it and stuff like that.
That's pretty sweet.
It's step one in the process of mining this asteroid that could be potentially worth trillions.
That seems to be what a lot of the reporters have picked up on. In fact, one story I read gave it a real-world value of like $10 quadrillion. You know, minus shipping costs.
Exactly. That's
$9 quadrillion.
Oh, shipping and handling.
That's what to say.
It's only $2.95 from the asteroid belt.
Now,
Everybody.
the better comparison I saw is they compared it to Death Stars. It's enough iron in this thing to build 115 Death Stars.
Oh, that is a lot of iron.
That is.
How would you get it here?
Well,
that's so big.
you'd want to take a piece at a time because the last thing you want to do is change the course of the asteroid to get it near Earth.
Or change the course of the
If
Earth.
anything went wrong there.
Well, I think we should change the course of the Earth. That seems like a
can't
logical
change the course of the
structure
Earth.
there.
As a physics person,
As-
even if you change the course of the Earth an inch, that would totally flip-flop the continents. Everything would die.
It would do an enormous amount of damage.
Yeah,
That would be the fun part, really.
Yeah, it would,
That would be the
really
fun part.
bad.
Yeah. Think of
You
it
would
as,
not survive an inch of polar shift on a rubber dinghy.
Think of it as skydiving without a parachute.
Oh,
It'll be
God,
fun for the
yeah.
first 30 seconds.
Fair enough.
So, since we're talking about stories, I have a local story.
A local tech story?
A local tech story.
Let's just check
Whoa.
it.
Yeah,
That's
we
pretty
don't
excellent.
get much of those. This is actually kind of more of an announcement that I heard about. There is this thing called the Como Game Jam that's going on this weekend. I don't know
Oh, yeah.
if you guys heard about that.
I saw a post about it.
Okay.
Looked interesting.
The Como Game Jam, it starts Friday at 6 and it ends Sunday at 3 p.m. At the Ready Innovation Hub over here on Walnut Street. And the idea is to go and make a game and have fun making games with a bunch of other people that make games.
That'd be fun. Get my kivy skills out.
Yeah. I think they are. The event is hosted by Space Shark Studios and Brave Toad Studios, which are two very small local gaming
The irony
studios.
is I started writing a game this weekend. I wonder if I can just shoehorn it into that
There you go.
and spend the weekend out there.
Just pretend like you write code really, really fast, and like you got it all done in the first 15 minutes.
Trust
No,
me.
I mean,
I've only done a weekend's worth of work on it, so it's not going to fool anyone that I'm super fast.
a lot of these games, it's really the concept. If they get the concept right, the code
Yeah.
doesn't take too much, and you get some really good ones coming out of these. I've seen a couple of them.
And art and design skill,
Art and
Yeah.
design skill, yes.
which is sadly lacking from a lot of Android platform games.
Really, all platform games.
Well,
It's
iOS has the same problem
lacking
too.
in the art
It's
department.
because I see it from the developer side because I get onto these frameworks and I go, oh, this game was run on this framework and this game was done on this framework. This is from the point of view of conversations from programmers, and a lot of them are like one-man games written by programmers
Yeah.
that you've never heard of before for a really good reason. They really are horrible. Not functionally horrible. They do work.
They're just not well considered games. in
They're
many
not
ways. Yeah.
meant for people.
As it turns out, most programmers don't actually have to deal with like the human element in programming all that often. So
No.
we don't tend to be very good at it as a general rule. It's kind of a special skill.
And our perspective on computers is so different, I think.
That is true.
Yeah,
Because-
that's also true.
You know, when you're talking about, oh, I want to move 1 million files, that's something that happens a lot in our world, but not
Yeah.
usually in other people's worlds.
Yeah, it's like when I build a script that can move 1 million files, but it has 97 flags, and they're all like -V and -K and -L, and you have no idea what they are. And by the way, I forgot to document any of them. So
Yeah.
good luck.
And just telling people to go to the man page doesn't work
Right.
when they don't know what you mean by that at all.
Exactly. Like
For those that
half
don't
of our-
know, man's is short for manual, because in the Unix world, it's too many letters to spell out the word manual.
It's very important. Also in the Unix world, ls is short for list because you had to save your 2 characters typing when you wrote
Nobody
things down.
No,
extra,
but
extra
if you
T's
say-
in your script.
And MV for
But-
move.
If you said ls if you said list, then the question is, what are you listing?
Well, when you do
Is
ls,
list
that's-
also a command? That's probably why.
List underscore dir. No,
Yeah.
No, we don't put that.
Anyway, not to fall down the rabbit hole of Linux commands for everybody. we could spend here all day making fun of Linux command shortcuts, but yeah. So I guess in another like sort of idle story, it's not really a story, I guess, but a couple of different places were making the claim that solar's reached that point, or will be reaching that point very soon. Apparently, the price of solar panels dropped by like 25% or something over the last couple months.
Over the last 5 months.
Yeah, so that's been we'll see if the trend continues and where that.
The factories are in high gear right now. Yes, they're pumping them out.
I mean, even if the trend continues, it sounds like the price is going to go back up. I mean, the price has fallen this far and it's fallen this far.
Well, I mean, the price goes up if demand disappears, right? But
But
it's hard to imagine demand disappearing at this stage.
And I would disagree with you slightly. Here's why. Because originally the price of solar was high because the price of technology was high.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it didn't produce down, the conversion rate was low.
And the supply chain was poor, right?
And the supply chain was poor, exactly. These drops in prices that we see are partially due to increase in demand. I would give you that. I think a big part of it is due to advances in technology. The fact that all these new factories were built pumping these things out. So you have an increase of supply more than an increase of demand.
Right.
Well, the only thing about if the demand falls off is then all those factories go out of business, and then the supply catches up.
And it's more mainstream shops now producing the solar cells. It's not a niche industry anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
Especially since the distribution and demand overseas is so large right now.
And
it's rapidly raising in the United States too. But
I think the biggest consumer of solar cells really are solar devices. So you see people have lights in their lawns that are solar powered, that charge up during the day and light up during the night, or things along those nature. I really think that if you do an analysis of the market, my guess is that would be the biggest sector, not people putting solar panels on the roof and all that stuff.
I would be interested to find out for real what that was the case.
What are the numbers?
Because I could go either direction on that. Because the other side, you could say it might be easier to build a big solar panel, rather than small solar panels. So it might be more advantageous to
and how much of it is the commercial sector, where they usually do large ones?
That is true.
Save on facilities costs.
Yeah, I mean it's always hard to remember that so much of manufacturing in this world is about other manufacturers and not about the people that we see. Like we never see 80% of things that get manufactured because they're just made for other people manufacturing things. So solar panel may fall into that category as well.
We'll see.
That 80% was totally made up number, by the way.
Yeah, I did read a story that there is some proposed legislation in Wyoming that would ban solar cells for, I think, to the year 2020 or something like that.
Why?
Because they wanted, the wording was very interesting. It was almost like locally sustainable energy, like the natural resources of coal and oil.
Politicians.
But it's proposed legislation, and so you got to worry about stories about those. But I guess the comments I heard was it's about a 50-50 shot of it passing. So
well, it actually, I mean,
so we'll see if it goes through.
Not to sell on the oddity of that particular story, but Wyoming is one of the windiest places on the planet, so it does have a possibility of the attempts to maybe increase the wind farm industry there.
But that's where
politicians do politician things.
I don't know.
But
yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. So
I don't.
Yeah. To avoid getting too political on that.
So since we've gotten slightly political, there's one story I want to bring up.
Uh-oh.
You know what it is, right?
No, I don't actually.
Chelsea Manning's sentence was commuted.
Yes.
Which, I'll admit, is a political story, but I think it touches tech because really, that was the first leak that was leaked directly to the public, enabled by the internet.
Or at least that is the first severely major one, right?
It was a trendsetter.
Yes, yeah. It was a trendsetter. Because before that, all the major whistleblowers, they would either leak. It was limited to who the information got to. It went to the press. The original documents went to the press, and then the press would write the stories about it, and that's what the people would see.
Like the Pentagon Papers.
Like the Pentagon Papers, exactly. Because at the time, you could only make a certain number of copies, and there was no internet to put it on. You had to mail them, so you mailed them to the press and people you thought that would be able to get it out. And with this was the first major release of that sort where the original documents were put in a public space where the public could go and see the original documents that were being leaked by a whistleblower.
That is true.
And that's why I think this is kind of, this whole saga does touch tech. It does have a tech flavor because of that,
Mm-hmm. It's fair. Also, because a large portion of the tech community is one of the, main reasons perhaps why her sentence was commuted.
I agree.
Tech community did have very high support for her, so.
Yeah.
Overall, speaking statistically.
The idea that information should be free.
Yeah.
Did play a big part in a lot of people's opinions.
That's a wholly internet age idea, right? The concept that information should flow freely from one point to another.
Heck, man, that's the Packers Manifesto.
Yep. But that's all about the internet rather than before you had computers and technology. I don't think people would have said that was true at all.
I think the closest thing you had to that was kind of the concept of the freedom of speech, is that you should be able to say whatever you want to say and have the freedom to say it publicly.
There's freedom of speech, but I suspect there's going to be coming down the path with this next generation a concept that I'm old enough that I have a hard time embracing it either, which is the idea that transparency is the only real moral way to go. The idea of keeping secrets, privacy, is in its own way not a moral thing, which on one hand brings up this weird Orwellian world. On the other hand, it's not Orwellian if everyone's transparent, including the government. Then everyone's exposed. But it brings up all kinds of weird other social issues and that kind of stuff, and it's just like, I don't know where that goes.
Yeah, I don't know.
And I say that with some irony because the company I'm working on right now is all about transparency as well. And it's in a scary way because you don't generally do what, I'm not going to talk about my company because it's conflict of interest here with the station, but it's a scary world.
I think you're going to see transparency and anonymity in a very weird way where people are going to bear themselves bare behind screen names.
I think so, but I'm not seeing with the younger kids. They're not being anonymous at all.
See, I
think they're embracing it almost as a lifestyle shift.
Maybe I'm just a curmudgeon, but I feel like that's just an artifact of being young. Just because I remember growing up on the earlier internet, and I was a lot more willing to say things then and do things.
More or less
I
agree with that to some degree.
I am now.
But I think there's also a mindset there I was foolishly open when I was in the early days of the internet back in the 80s.
Yeah.
But I was not necessarily pushing it as an ideal either, though.
But I think the people that I don't see regular, let me rephrase it.
Regular folk.
I see companies pushing it as an ideal. Oh, the transparent company, you can see our salaries, you can see our blog posts, you can see our internal discussions. Companies are becoming that kind of, transparency and pushing it out as, here, you can see everything about us so you know that we're the good guys, kind of a thing.
To a degree, they're also pushing the transparency to people too, right? Facebook is the one that said you have to use your real name.
And that you see that too. You see networks trying to push people to be more transparent. But I don't see people themselves saying, oh, I want to say this with my real name attached to it. I just see them saying, oh, I want this to be said. Does that make sense? So it's not coming from within people saying, oh, I think everything about that person should be transparent. People will say, oh yeah, everything about that company should be transparent, or everything about the government should be transparent, that kind of stuff, because they're companies and governments and they're not people and they should be held to certain standards. But me as a person, no, I don't want everything about me to be transparent.
To some degree too, I think that there's just we haven't really learned our social rules around the new technology yet. It seems like every time a new technology comes out, there's this sort of weird period where the politeness, the manners, I guess, for lack of a better word, haven't really been figured out, and you get odd sort of behavior, and then you get people complaining about that odd behavior, and then it sort of settles down into a new world. and don't really know what that
Maybe
means.
I'll, over the next year, I'll make more of an effort to talk about that very question with more of the young folks.
Yeah, I mean, I have a 2-year-old, so it's not like I have a guy who's got a great deal of knowledge about the internet right now. So
Yeah, well,
who knows? Maybe he knows more about it than I do at this point.
So
2 years old, I'm sure your kid already knows how to use web browsers and
Yeah.
YouTube.
He did manage somehow to unlock my phone and do some odd things to it, and I wasn't paying attention to
Good
it. So there's that. Yeah.
You don't know how settings work if you don't change all of them.
That's right. That's how I learned.
funny story. My nephew was born in the States, and he grew up seeing my mom and dad over video cam on Skype. So when they came, the first time that they came to visit the States, and they walked into the door, he freaked out, not knowing that, oh, this is a real person that I'm talking to. I thought this was just a kid.
Thought it was just something on camera. Nice.
I mean, he was like 1 or 2 at the time. So
It's like if Dora the Explorer suddenly walks into the room. You know?
Exactly,
Like, you're
exactly.
supposed to be in a TV only. You know.
Yeah, exactly. You're supposed to be in that other world.
That's fantastic.
So I think we're going to take care of some station business, and then we'll come back to Mike's predictions.
Yeah, I'm very excited.
Yeah. So stay tuned, and remember,
Prepare
this is
to
a
be
call-in show
underwhelmed.
to tech news. So, Mike's predictions, and this is a call-in show. We keep on forgetting to mention that. So if you want to call in, the phone number to call is 573-443-8255, and we'll try to... Oh, actually, we have a caller on the line.
Wow, that's good luck.
Oh, well, whoops. Hello, caller.
Howdy.
Hi.
Hey, about going way back in time here to the discussion about solar, got a few observations to make about why I haven't dived into solar myself yet, because I'm highly interested in it. I've been around a while. I'm 63 years old and been in electronics since, 70, I guess, 68, 65, something like that. And I'm looking at the technology and how the technology's changed just in the area of batteries. And like, for example, the original batteries were like 1.5 volts, and then we came out with nickel-cadmium batteries at 1.26 volts. And, you know, you couldn't mix and match the batteries to go ahead and go work with each other. And then we came out with nickel metal hydride batteries. And then we came with even a different voltage. And now we're on lithium-ion batteries, which even have yet a different voltage.
And you're talking about specifically batteries that are in, like, devices, so rechargeable portable batteries. Okay.
And what I'm saying is, if we're having that sort of thing just with batteries that you put into a transistor radio or something like this, God, I'm dating myself, what's going to happen with these new batteries that Elon Musk and others are making? I mean, if I go ahead and get a solar array right now, and it's going to have some batteries in it, in 5 years, if one of those power cells goes bad, and let's say I've got 20 of them, I haven't looked into it far enough, but if I've got 20 of them, one of them goes bad, I may have to go on eBay to find a replacement battery because they may not make that specific battery voltage and current anymore. And I'm thinking the same thing for the solar array and the solar cells themselves. Do they put out a different amount of voltage depending on what generation they are? If they put out a different amount of voltage, you can't run these guys in parallel because one of them would be putting out more voltage than the others, and it'll backfeed the voltage into the other solar cells and cause them to heat up, and oh my gosh, at least I'm assuming that. So one caveat emptor I would go ahead and suggest for anyone thinking about solar is how stable is the technology, and what sort of guarantee do you have from your supplier that the solar cell voltage and current ratings are going to be the same and the battery current and voltage ratings are going to be interchangeable with tomorrow's technology? Because every time I turn around, they're coming up with new, more powerful, slightly different voltage, slightly different current, and it's all great when you buy. That's also why I don't have an electric car.
I'm going to make a presumption about that and say that the technology exists to handle that sort of problem, because there are people in this world, you know, if I could back up for a second, digress and say, for example, wind power and solar power are two examples of DC generating current that has to be upcycled into AC to run your home appliances and light bulbs, for example. And so there's already a device that has to convert that voltage into something usable with a certain amount of amperage to, a transistor, if you will, transformer, sorry. And there are also people who, for example, have grid power and solar power and wind power running simultaneously in their homes.
And everything gets regulated.
So there's got to already be some sort of load management device that takes all these various components and harmonizes them, or even prioritizes them with computer technology, so that you can use them simultaneously, depending on whether it's windy, whether it's not windy, whether it's sunny, whether it's not sunny. And so I presume that the same solution for what you're discovering would be available, just you would hook up two different battery arrays and have it managed in the same fashion.
Yeah,
good point.
I mean, he does raise an interesting point, though, that with new technologies like this, there's a standardization issue.
Absolutely,
right? Where you're trying to determine, kind of standard power output and standard power input.
And because we see technology growing exponentially, it could be only a mere 3 or 4 years before the technology changes and they stop making something.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, and because it's a newer technology that might be rapidly evolving, you do kind of run that to some degree, that risk.
Yeah.
But I would think that, as you said, that there are, flattening transformer technologies. I feel like grids have had this problem for many generations.
I want to bring up this point, is that when we're talking about solar, we really have to talk about 3 different realms of solar. There is the big manufacturers, and those people have the money and the
Expertise.
Not just the money and the expertise, the economic incentive. It makes economic sense for them to say, oh, okay, well, if this goes out in 10 years, I can buy a regulator and I can put it in place, and I can I can either replace the whole system or I can rig it up, but I can get an engineer to come out and fix it for me, basically. And that's the solution for those people. And they can also, afford to make these kinds of contracts where they say, oh, the SLA on this is 50 years.
Right. They can demand higher quality equipment than your average consumer can as well.
Yes, they can demand higher quality. They can demand certain standards. They can demand certain levels of service. And in worst case scenarios, they can bring out an engineer to come and fix it. So that's one group. The other group are the solar powered devices.
End users.
No.
These are the solar lights that you were talking about earlier.
Exactly, exactly. Things like solar lights, or the little solar battery that'll you charge up during the day and it'll put out it's kind of like for your phone, you plug in with the USB cable.
Yeah, or like crosswalk lights, or other devices that you see out in the city that are
meters.
Yeah,
exactly. Where the panel is tied to the device that it's charging, and so that you don't differentiate the solar panel from the device. It's the whole thing all together. Either it all goes bad and you throw it away, or it all works. Or
you throw away the panel when you throw away the equipment at that point too.
Pretty much,
from scratch.
Exactly. And then you have the third group of people. The third group is the people that want solar panels on their roof and want to, have their own solar power in their house and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And for those people, I think what the caller's bringing up is a very legitimate concern.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that if
That's
we don't
when you go rental.
well,
this is weird, but I do actually happen to know that you can rent solar panels. At least there are some companies in the world that do allow that renting.
Solar City does it.
Yeah, Solar City.
And if it becomes obsolete, you just say, hey, things have gone wrong, replace it.
Well, I imagine those lease contracts, that becomes a matter of how those lease contracts are written.
Sure.
Right? Because then the lease contract allows for a certain amount of maintenance or whatever.
but at the very least, you can get out of it in 5 years or whatever.
Yeah, in theory.
I feel better. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry to
There
cut
you
into
go.
your time for your prognostication, but you got me all excited talking about solar earlier, and I just had to go ahead and call.
Call in
Thank you.
any time.
Yeah. thanks for listening. All right.
A little bit of feedback on the Tesla question you brought up earlier about Tesla batteries. They are based on a standardized battery size that Tesla didn't invent, which is a good sign.
Oh, okay.
They're small. Ironically, they look like flashlight batteries.
Oh, so they're kind of like the same stuff that you'd see in your laptop batteries if you've ever taken them apart.
Yeah, they're power battery. They're lithium-ion batteries based on a standardized size, and so when you get a power wall, what you're actually getting is a large frame holding hundreds and hundreds of these
Right.
tiny little batteries set up in a grid array. But also when you do your laptop, it's the same size battery when you're doing your
So I
other
Like
devices.
the
assume.
cordless drill has.
So this
Or
is a
a
standard.
Tesla power a car has there's very specific names and models for them.
So these are industry standards.
These
that
are
we-
industry standards. However, they weren't. They're standards by accident almost to some degree,
Yeah.
because there was enough applications using the same size that it all just kind of came together and they had a model.
Right.
One manufacturer, I'm just guessing because I don't remember the full detail and history of it, but one manufacturer gave it a name and everyone just used the same name.
Okay.
Yeah, usually those
The
standards
caller's
are the most
concern that was
durable,
a very real
Yeah.
one though, because that's one of the few standards I can think of in that industry. A lot of the rest of it, you're gonna have to have an electrician come in and figure it out,
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
which is unfortunate, but it is what it is right now. I would imagine something's going to emerge as a standard, but we're not quite there yet for a lot of this. It's still new. It's still changing so fast.
Yeah. I mean, that's the other thing is that when technologies are new, you get standards that change rapidly. But
Yeah.
as they mature, those standards will settle down.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
people who are worried, can always wait, and those standards should, as long as the market continues, the standards should clarify themselves.
For a mass market.
Yeah.
Now, at the higher end, I agree with what you said earlier, because I know someone that works at a place that makes transformers down in Jeff City.
Yeah.
And I was talking to him a while back, and I guess those aren't standardized either. Every power plant orders their transformer
Oh.
for that particular application. Maybe they'll order 3 of the same kind because it's some kind of,
Redundant system.
three-leg grid thing kind of stuff. But most of the time, it's every single one of them's unique.
Wow.
It's got to really make their manufacturing process interesting, since
It is a
custom
very
constructing
interesting-
everything.
It's software-controlled manufacturing process. Yes.
Interesting. I have to have a press passes to that factory one of these days.
Yeah. We can talk about it after the show. I don't want to give
Sure,
away
sure.
proprietary
Yeah,
information.
yeah.
Actually, I don't have proprietary information.
We can all speculate, but
We can speculate, but yeah. It's a interesting world. But yeah, the bigger player stuff will probably always require engineers of some kinds.
which is kind of the way they like it, right? I mean, a lot of
Well,
major organizations like
when you
that level of
standardize,
control.
you get inefficiencies at the same time. You get manufacturing efficiencies because you're making the same thing over and over again, but you also get inefficiencies in that maybe you only need 1.3 volts and not 1.5 volts from a cell.
Yeah.
So you're wasting facilities when you have something that's standardized because every application is unique. But when you get big enough and you're building a transformer the size of a house, or you're doing a switch that's the size of a small car, you don't want that waste.
Yeah.
You size it to the particular application. And so customization makes sense in a large scale, pretty much always. It's just
It's actually interesting. This is from many years ago, but there was an interesting article from a couple years ago about how Google did that with computers. And they brought in a bunch of electrical engineers to change a way, how we use standard ports, VGA ports and USB
Well,
ports and all this. And
Google standard
actually-
computers are a big selling point right now on the market as a whole, because pretty much
Yeah.
the rack industry swapped over to the Google standard.
And-
Yeah, all of their computers, for example, run on 12 volts.
Right. And they run DC current in a lot of
Mhm.
ways, and they have like special ports for plugging. Like the ways they plug in network ports are different than the
Right.
the standard consumer
Ethernet.
network ports. Yeah, Ethernet ports and stuff.
You also
Really
have a
quite
standardized, what do they call those things that come on the container ships?
Docks.
A shipping container.
Yeah.
They will take a full shipping container off the ships and light the shipping container rather than opening it up. And the shipping container has the AC and all the racks already built into it.
Yeah.
They light it up, and when a certain percentage of the machines, they can shut off the machines remotely. And when a certain percentage of the machines are no longer functional, then they shut the whole container down and they take it over into recycling. So they don't actually install those computers.
Yeah, Google's got some really interesting. I mean, when you
At scale,
at
you
the
can do a lot of
computing
fun
level
things.
for Google, it's
Yeah.
really, really interesting to hear what they do with their data centers.
Yeah.
You know, because they also do they don't fix hard drives. They just throw them away. Like, they don't fix things. They just pull computers off the rack and basically throw them away.
Yeah,
And, you know, sometimes it's like, well, you know, I guess if you've got
1 million of them.
4 million computers or however many Google's got now,
Yeah.
then you don't really care about an individual server anymore, which is kind of, it's just a totally different world than, well, everybody else works in, so.
Well,
Yeah.
90% of the world.
Yeah.
You see it with Amazon, Microsoft, to a lesser extent, IBM, and certainly Google. They have cloud. You hear the word cloud, and most of the time it's a marketing term trying to sell you something on the internet. But in fact, the true large cloud systems have a very different mindset to them, to how they
Yeah.
operate.
Yeah,
You don't
absolutely.
put software on a computer. Software distributes itself
Yeah.
across the network like a living system.
And computers don't, like, you don't, like, have a server and then turn it on and then configure it. You sort of, you know, just sort of
You
grab some space on something
You
somewhere.
instance the shard on
Yeah,
the thing. And
the language gets weird.
Yeah.
The language gets very weird very quickly.
Yeah. And a lot of the systems, and I know Amazon does this, and so does Heroku, just to enforce and make sure that the system runs predictably all the time under shifting conditions, they won't allow machines to run very long. Heroku has a limit of 1 hour. If a machine's been running for more than an hour, they shut it off and then turn it back on again
Yeah.
and re-enter the network.
Just to keep things consistent.
They
It's
want
very,
all their services to run with continuous failure so that they don't have to worry about failure.
Yeah, and
So does
Netflix
that-
has
is
this
it-
thing called the Chaos Monkey, which is on their network, which will, on their production network, you know, what you connect to, that will randomly drop connections or mess with packets or do all kinds
Shut
of
off systems. And,
Yeah.
Yep, just so that they can handle
the-
failure when
From the
it.
ground up, you get your what they call 5 nines in the industry, 99.999% uptime, which is what 3.5 minutes per year.
yeah, something like that.
So
It's
you ought to
also,
be down for 3 minutes.
my favorite comparison is the...
That's your
the,
wiggle room.
My favorite comparison to that, though, is the amount of money that gets spent to get to 5 nines, where it's an exponential curve, right? So 1 9 is like $1 million, 2 nines is like $10 million. I mean, it rapidly goes up. And
But
it's
when you
very,
get big enough
very
in scale,
expensive.
it's not too bad.
Well, once you already spent $100 million, spending $150 million is not something that you're necessarily going to shrink about. I mean, it's kind of weird, but
True.
that is
But
kinda
the key,
how
though,
it
is they don't
works.
want to rely on the hardware.
Yeah.
That's why the system's designed to be a self-healing, self-moving system from the ground up. And you force failure regularly just to make sure your system never cares about failure, so that your service runs even with the machines popping out.
Which is really funny
popcorn.
because at the same time, hardware reliability is going up.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you know, the actual hardware itself is becoming more reliable and more consistent. So
I
it's
don't
sort
know
of
if it was
funny
Google. One of the
irony.
large carriers went fully over to solid state on the hard drives a while back.
Yeah.
I think it was Google, actually.
I feel like sort of the thing Google would do.
I remember us covering a story about Google making the largest bulk purchase of solid state drives. Like they just basically made a 2-year order or something from one factory that will make nothing but drives
Yeah.
for Google or
For
something.
the next
like
2
that.
years, you are our factory.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's essentially what Ford does with cars, right? Like, they have whole factories all over the country that's like, you make shocks for Ford cars. You make, you know,
Yeah.
brake pads
Yeah,
that only
with
work on
contacts,
Chevys,
right, sure, sure.
And they're exclusively for these large, you know, auto manufacturers. So it shouldn't be weird to us
That was the
there
way
are-
for a lot of large manufacturing in the old days. Nowadays, the newer, more successful companies that are in manufacturing don't do that anymore.
Yeah, I think you have to be at a pretty monstrously high scale before that starts to pay off, right?
But it turns out that works in a non-legacy system, but in a legacy system, the price you pay for having parts of your infrastructure not really working with you anymore, but working against you because they want to pull more profit from the host. It creates this weird dynamic over time. I'm not going to get into it. This is not a manufacturing show, but that's why I've been studying for the last 4 years, is manufacturing industry. So, but the more successful, but in the old days, you couldn't scale a large company. you get a scaling problem after you have so many thousands of employees. But nowadays, because of technology, you can scale companies larger, and it makes more sense to pull all that stuff in-house, so that the profit motive for making that part is the same as the profit motive for making the whole device, the whole car.
Right.
As opposed to each of them having independent profit motives.
Well, that's vertical integration, right? It's the Apple motto, essentially.
Apple direction. And it's also partly why Elon Musk is having so much success with like the space programs and that kind of stuff. He doesn't outsource, ever. Except for things that have nothing to do with, he may be outsourcing his HR, for example. And nothing that's based on his product is outsourced. But that's really a direction you can go in if you're starting from the ground up there. It'd be very hard to convert an old company to that.
If I remember correctly from my history textbooks, though, vertical integration does occasionally run afoul of the law. In that, I'm pretty sure Standard Oil attempted vertical integration as a monopolistic means. And not to delve into law, because I don't know anything about it, but I do recall from some history book or another that there are there are other challenges that you run into with vertical integration.
The irony is if Elon Musk does too well on the space program and is like 10 times cheaper than everyone else and takes over the whole market, yes, he's going to have monopoly problems. I know, that's the irony is that
when you do well, I think there's a difference between taking
that's
the
a good
market
problem
over
to have,
just
though.
better versus taking the market over through,
force and
unethical
means. Yeah, that is different. But
so anyway,
Google goes out of the way to not mention their monopoly.
Yeah, right. They're very careful about that.
Yeah, they're always creating new side businesses with Alphabet
just to make it look.
Don't
like
be looking at that search.
Don't be looking at the fact that I own 90% of all search.
Although I do have a story about DuckDuckGo. That's kind of a weird success story recently. Have you seen their numbers?
No.
They're screaming right now.
I use DuckDuckGo.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
Isn't it just the Google search engine?
No.
No, it's their
They
own.
have their own.
It's their own search engine.
They're backed by Yandex, which is, ironically enough, a Russian search engine. But the way it works is they don't customize the searches for you specifically.
They go way out of their way. This is their selling point. Way out of the way to never collect information about their users.
Yes.
That's not to say they don't do advertising. They
do advertising.
Heavily into advertising.
Just undirected.
But they will. It's an all anonymous advertising, and because they don't want to ever get into the scenario where they have to give up information, so they just don't collect it in the first place.
Okay.
Right.
And that's getting to be really popular with a large enough segment of the population that people are switching over to DuckDuckGo. And until recently, hearing other people talk about it, because I'm not a big user right now, it wasn't very good until like within the last year or two.
Yeah, I mean that's the problem with search
They've
engines in
improved
general.
quite a bit. Their AI, I don't know much about their AI, but their AI is improving.
I have to say that I do not have any problem with it. Yes, I've noticed that their quality has gone up exponentially, and I use it every day, and I don't miss it. I don't miss Google at all. I mean,
Although, here's a weird story about that. I accidentally, this is like 2 days ago, typed in the word test into I was trying to type it into a program I was working on, but I typed it into the web browser accidentally.
Right.
And Google looked up the word test. But instead of telling me anything about the word test as a whole, it told me about the word test in 3 different programming languages, because it knows I'm a programmer. It came up with the word test in the context of, it's not a good story because I'm forgetting on it, but all the searches on the front page were about me in the word test.
Yeah, sure.
yeah.
It had nothing, you would never see that on a generic search. It specifically knew what I was looking for.
Yeah, I mean, I just did test while you were talking, and I got back some very, I wouldn't call them odd. They're perfectly reasonable results.
They're Scott-specific results, aren't they?
Yeah, there's just nothing in here. Like there's one about testing software because I'm a programmer, and then there's Wikipedia, and then there's which is the QA version of test, and then there's one on statistics and one on speed test for broadband. And
in fact, the first programming link it showed me was for Python unit testing because it knows I program in Python. It knows me.
I guess it doesn't know me quite so well because it doesn't do much programming for me. It's more generic than that.
Another part of it is that, and this might play into it, is that I'm used to the Google queries from 1990, before Google had all the whole we watch everything you do. Back when Google was pretty much PageRank and a little bit of other spice.
Right.
And back then, you know, you kind of got used, I don't know, I was a kid and it just kind of came natural that, oh, you type in these words these way that make no grammatical sense, but they will get Google to give you the result you're looking
right.
for.
The plus and the minuses on the
And
words.
you chop off
No,
the
no, no.
pronouns like those. You like leave out the does and the ands and the
Yep, exactly.
quarters and
I don't
stuff
do
like
the
that.
plus and the minuses, but yeah, you know, yeah, just like nouns in the order that you want them to be in.
Right, sort of
But
order
the-
of importance sometimes.
Yeah.
When, like you used to I want this literal exact phrase. I don't want it chunked up, so you put it in double quotes. You're in the
Exactly.
habit of doing it.
Exactly. So I got used to that when I first started getting on the internet, and so it stuck with me forever. And now when I use DuckDuckGo, I use that. I mean, it's just whenever I search,
Right.
that's what I use. So I wonder if that has an impact on why, to me, you know, it just seems.
Seems better.
Because you're
I won't
already
say
trained.
I won't say better.
Can you do ands and ors and
Natural.
that kind of stuff?
Yeah.
With DuckDuckGo? Oh, nice. I might use it some for that. To be able to do search for literal strings with an and and an or compound.
Yeah, because if you are proficient in Boolean logic, then
Hell, I think you can even give
doing
it a
searches that way
regex.
is pretty impressive.
I think
Really?
I think there's syntax to give it a regex. Let me check that out real quick.
For those who are not aware, regex is a shortcut for regular expression, which is a programming language inside of programming languages, pretty much.
Yeah, it's a standardized way to search for strings, except that there's about a dozen standards.
Yeah, and you know,
It's a
every
horrible,
few
it's
years
a
someone
horrible
comes
standard.
up, they say, "Oh, we've got a standard that will fix all the other standards," and then you just have one more standard.
You add more standards.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah, yeah.
exactly.
That's the life of regular expressions.
So like the new programming languages that come out that solve all the problems from the other programming languages being incompatible with each other.
Right.
So now you have a new incompatible programming
Exactly.
language.
Yeah. It's fun. Programming is fun. We make most of our own problems.
Do we ruin your prognostication?
We did kind of steal all your prognostication time, didn't
No,
we?
not at all.
Save that for next week, I guess.
And AI has come out that, and there's a certain amount of dubiousness to this story. I'll say that up front, but some researchers have come up with an AI that is apparently getting an 82% success rate in determining whether a person is going to die or not within the next year from a heart disease. It combines
heard about
medical
this.
imaging
Yeah.
and a bunch of other stuff.
And they got to be 80% accurate
Yeah.
based on data and historical information about whether or not you've had heart trouble. And I believe, though, that they're dealing with heart patients. So they already have a certain amount of data.
So they already have
That
a
was-
high,
I was
probably
about
an
to
elevated
ask.
base rate.
Yeah, whether or not you've had a heart attack, but just if you're a heart patient.
They already
So
have
you-
much more data than they would have over
Right.
me or you.
Right, so they're
Right,
not going to
right, yeah, if you
predict
read
with
this-
80% accuracy you or I, because we haven't been, presumably, been seeing a
Well-
cardiologist every month or something.
Well, because of my family history, actually, I'm probably in that list. But yeah, it's not generic. It's not Google figuring this out.
No. But yeah, the accuracy was amazing. 80% accuracy based on mortality,
yeah.
which is
So-
great
so
if
do-
you
so
are
do
a
you-
life insurance actuarial.
Yeah, do
Yeah,
you
you
want
can
to
raise
hear
those
that
guys'
if you're one of the
rates.
patients, though?
I mean, do you want to hear that they've given you the odds of dying?
Yeah.
Oh,
You
do
go-
they tell the
You go,
patient?
you know,
I think
you're
you're gonna find out
79%.
regardless when your health
You're
insurance suddenly
79%
goes
not
up.
likely to make it till next year.
Well, you know,
Sorry
right
to hear
now,
that. By the way, we need your payment up front.
Yeah. Yeah. By the
Oh,
way,
boy.
we're doubling all of your expenses on on everything: your health, your life insurance, your death, all that stuff.
We're sucking you dry for the last moment. I love this society,
well,
right?
that's work. And that's going to be a
Gotta love
fluid
us.
number. That would be a fluid number if they were to tell patients whether or not they had a predictable model, because presumably they were tracking mortality, so based on whether or not someone died. So if someone then takes that information and then makes treatment decisions based on that information, they see more or they discontinue treatment, then the model has to shift.
Yeah.
Because by knowing
Well,
something, by predicting something, you actually change the outcome of the people making decisions.
I don't know how accurate it is, but I just met with my doctor in December. In fact, I've got a 7.5% chance of having a heart attack within the next 10 years. And that's based on, because he you know, I talk tech with him all the time, so he
Sure.
actually let me into the computers.
Okay.
He showed me where you fill out all the fields and stuff. But yeah, and so he's talking about putting me on statins and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, yay.
Because apparently diet doesn't do squat for people anymore.
Nothing. No.
No.
Better living through pharmacology. Come on.
Weight loss works though,
Right.
but not making a healthier diet apparently.
But doesn't one cause the other?
Not necessarily.
No,
Isn't it?
you can gain
You can be thin with a terrible diet.
and
Well, yeah,
you
you
can gain
can-
a lot of weight with good food.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
healthy food if you eat enough of it.
Also,
You need enough of it.
also, isn't there an element with hearts that if damage is done, it can't be undone? So, like, even if you switched your diet to something so much better
some
now, you're not necessarily going to fix
extent.
everything.
To some extent, heart muscles and do repair. They just don't repair. It's not.
What
it's not
doesn't
as-
repair are the nerve bundles.
It's not as elastic as people want, but even nerves replenish themselves to some degree. Even brain cells. It used to be believed that you never had new brain cells, but people
Right.
do actually. It's just at a very, very slow glacially pace.
Compared to your skin cells, which replenish like every
Yeah.
5 seconds or something crazy like
So
that.
it's not a good game plan to lose nerve cells in your head.
No.
Yes.
But it is possible to recover some.
Lesson learned. Thanks, NFL.
So to kind of close out with a little bit of doom and gloom for Mike's sake, the St. Louis library has been attacked with ransomware and bitcoins are being demanded.
Oh, God.
Yep, I saw that article too. It was some
Yeah.
250 computers or something. Got it.
Uh,
Something affected.
They are demanding. Oh, they don't tell you how many bitcoins.
So what did it- what did it-
$35,000, which affects 700 computers across Missouri City, 16 public libraries. So 16 libraries in St. Louis with 700 computers.
What will they lose if they don't pay? Just the card catalog or what? Do they not have
They may
backups?
have historical documents, like scanned documents
I-
that are super important.
And the way this sounds like those little terminals that the people use. You know, you walk up to the computer
Yeah,
and
and
you.
clients.
Yeah, I
They
don't.
also-
it
That-
doesn't-
that- just wipe them.
Well, that's not worth paying ransom over.
Yeah,
No, you
They
just
may
exactly.
wipe
not
them out.
be. There's always a possibility because ransomware operates essentially on people's not necessarily knowing that they can act.
Oh, here's one of the key phrases. The system is believed to have been infected through a centralized computer server. And staff emails have also been frozen by the virus. The FBI has been called. So if it's a centralized server, that means they got everything.
Okay. And their email is stopped. There might be some stuff.
Yeah, that's
that,
important.
There's some. There's my days as a librarian. There was overdue library books, but there's also locations of where those books are, what your catalog is.
yeah,
You
depends
could
on how
lose-
good they are at backups.
And some of those libraries, if you go over 100,000 books or so, without that catalog, books will disappear. Like books will, 50 years later, you'll be like, wow, we had a book we never knew existed.
Right.
Because it'll just be gone. So,
Well, they audit
so
regularly.
doom and gloom.
Okay.
So
Doom
we
and
need,
gloom for
so we
everybody
need
in
book
this.
drones.
That's right. People just look for books.
Heck yeah.
All right, that was KOPN Tech Radio. Thank you guys for listening. We'll see you all next week. Up next is another edition of Jazz plus Blues equals Soul with Sir Kelvin Walsh.
Good night.
Bye-bye, everybody.